The role of the critic is to watch niggas beast while we burn down the slave ship. The biology signifies the disruptive ways in which the scientific knowledge which organize and internalize values of what it means to be human. Niggas ain't down with any of this shit because it's not that the question that only fucks up the way in which the animals are engaged, but ways in which we are also herded and put into this confinement. That's the ignorability disadd to their entire position. You are not fucking listening or embracing an ethics of care when you cannot actually establish a empathy with the ways in which niggas have been organized in a way that does not activate in the same space of humanity which your evidence is describing. You have not listened to us. You have not cared about the way in which we gave our positions because you are always like to push us out, to crowd out our grammar. That's the problem Harper has with the type of activism which they are performing because it's one that constantly tends to assert itself over the issues of black and brown bodies. Is that we don't have a relationship to these things. We just talk about them differently. That's why it's important to understand the methodology of this debate is that watching niggas burn slave ship is important because it's a site in which all the violence of the slave ship has internalized and becomes an effective force that terrorizes and challenges the position of what it means to be human. If you were anti-synthetic space and refusal of that shit, the only way the slave ship was all of our duty evidence from the 2AC, then 1AC cannot answer the question of how is it possible to be human? How is it possible for white bodies to have these types of autonomy and authority and sovereignty that their evidence describes not only linked to the body way in which you treat animal bodies, but the ways in which blackness and people of color have been written out of those things. Black people are not human within the space of civil society in the way in which we traditionally conceive of rights. This argument is not about black people getting rights, but the ability for us to affirm our own affective capacities in spaces like debate. The problem is when they can't actually engage our arguments about what it means to be a nigga without trying to bracket those out is a reason why you vote affirmatively, because that shows how their performative methodology is in itself bad. Our evidence only impact turns all their things because the slave ship is not just a vehicle of ontological declaration, but an entire epistemological order that justifies humanity's ability to both physically control bodies and make the conditions of the black body to be a site of negative value. All of our Yancey evidence and poetry want to see point to these things. So it answers all their Diamond and Adams evidence, which is in the context of things like fitness movements and their ability to use rights as a starting point for making criticisms of eco-pedagogy, but not in the context of our evidence, which is a larger scope. It's not just a question of the black-white binary, which their evidence describes in their graphs, but a question of the entire ontological plane. Yeah, the human body. What makes bodies human and non-human? Especially, there's a point in the one in our how do I relate to these things? I am from Mexico. If you look at that fucking map over there, it shows a direct link between Africa to Veracruz, where slaves were brought over and then used as a yardstick, as a metaphysical yardstick to determine who does and does not value in these particular spaces. Their only real piece of offense here is that the root cause debate. But their point, you should not prefer these root cause debates. It's not a question of what's mutually exclusive about how each of us have our own particular strategies for confronting the ways in which humanity and the idea of what it means to be human has come a dominant thing. It means that we can still get a risk of something or whatever you want to call it, maybe a permutation, but it's not a reason objective framework. You can send the Judy evidence that it shows showing autonomy is not the same thing as becoming a sovereign subject with their evidence beside this thing. Niggas already commodified. It's only about resistance, the disruption, the forces in which we have to engage these things. What else do you want me to do?
The way she describes genocide every day.
The way in which she describes the way she describes the genocide of animals, the rape of every day, only supercharges our ignorability impacts. Because remember, in the process is that the conference in our Yancey is that you cannot calculate the amount of stillborn children, the amount of pregnant women, the amount of slaves that were thrown overboard. The fact that you can do that thing shows that you have a particular privilege in your ability to play against ontological reason.
And niggas are getting killed by police every day.
And there are always niggas getting killed by the state every day because they view them as animals, they view them as cattle, they view them as things to be killed. Even if you are right about your root cause claims, this is not a reason to reject the affirmative. This is just a reason why we have different methodologies in the way in which we approach the discussion that are contextual to our particular experiences. And this is why the permutation is good. You can still advocate for things like animal rights activism, but you can also advocate for niggas burning down the slave ship, the epistemological frame that also justifies those things.
Which the Judy evidence is interrogating what it means to be human.
Yeah, what the Judy evidence says is what it means to interrogate what it means to be human, which they don't have an answer to, which is the reason why they should lose, because that means that their epistemology is fundamentally bankrupt, but they can't understand. It's not a uniform capacity about what it means to be human, but human, that is, so human is something that's spread out through all the things, and not all of it's underwritten by our ability to make a relationship to animals, because there are instances in which the slave master loved his dog more than he loved black people, and where Paris Hilton today still loves her fucking dog than any of the black people in places like Compton. There's a reason why their methodology is bad, and why it can only be resolved by a synthesis of these two strategies that recognize that we have different ways of talking about what it means to be human. The fact that they can't answer these questions is the reason why they do not get access to that, because that means they can't watch niggas burn down the station without trying to fan the fires of the floods, without trying to put out the fires themselves by excluding our particular types of formances in the way in which they predicate and prioritize politics. Yeah, remember, ethics are shaped by ontology. That is the 2AC in response to all their evidence forms of oppression, especially when they are linking very hard and are showing an impact to ignorability DA. The only other real piece of office evidence, the black-white binary evidence, their last piece of evidence they read about religion is a really bad mischaracterization of the argument. It's not that black people have an exclusive claim to the structures of violence, but that black people have an underprivileged but non-exclusive relationship to these things, in which we need to understand the ways in which niggas can adapt and develop the burning of the slave ship. They do not have a response to any of our framing arguments as to why. They don't even have a piece of evidence about what does it mean. They have evidence that combines niggas, the niggas that our GMs talk about, and what it means to be in an Afro-Brazilian struggle. It means that they have lost this debate because they continue to obfuscate and bracket out the discussions about how can all of us in our relationship and watching these processes can engage in effective pragmatic politics.
2 minutes.